What's happening, gang? You are live back in the Secret Stash. I'm your host, Jesse Ibanez. And we're hanging out with some cool local people, talking about some important local topics. And today, the one everybody likes talking about, divorce, right? I need like one of those buttons, like the dun 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 on the organ button. You got one of those for me, Steve? And we'll work on that. And live in the studio today, I've got someone who's flanking me on this to help me sound much smarter than I actually am about it. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending how perspective you look at it, Charlotte and I both find people a little further to downstream from this conversation of divorce and helping folks get into and out of homes. And if there were only a better system further upstream to maybe help prevent it from happening in the first place. And while the rest of us are just hoping for that, Charlotte went out and wrote a wonderful book about it. It's called You Can Be Right or You Can Be Happily Married. And you can follow her conversation at yourmarriageharmony.com. And she does have a live event coming up here in San Diego in January. You're not going to want to miss that, and details to follow there as well. Charlotte, let's pick this back up, because this is probably, in my humble opinion, the most essential piece of this whole work that you put together, which is it's not just you and your transformation and your evolution in this conversation, like your willingness to wake up one day, feel inspired enough to raise your hand up and be like, okay, I want to be part of the solution here. I'm going to start looking at myself and figuring out what I could do better to help save my marriage or keep it healthy. But you got to deal with another person as well, right?
That's the hard part.
It's the hard part, exactly. And so the concept maybe of buy-in, I think, could not be understated in this. And the way you phrased it in your chapter, it can't be accomplished alone. So what kind of insight can you share with us about that?
Well, for me, the not alone part was I have a very strong spiritual walk, and that is my biggest partner through all of life, but specifically with my marriage. And in conjunction with that, I have a prayer partner that I meet with on the phone once a week, and we help keep each other accountable in our walk and in our marriages. And so that, I think accountability to another human is critical. Keeping you on the straightforward, not an opportunity to get together and complain about each other's situations, but really how to inspire to go in the forward direction you're looking for. And then thirdly, with that is really investing time with my husband to grow together. And we do that with a reading time that we have 4 days a week, early in the morning. That we do daily. We, in fact, get together at 5:30 in the morning and read for about 45 minutes. And it's a chance to come together in a different setting, talk about what we've read, and other things come up as a result of that normally wouldn't. And because of that, it allows that foundation to continue to be knit. Instead of kind of going full speed, 100 miles an hour, your separate ways all week long, and then coming back together or not on the weekend and then going on again. So it really brings us together in a planned way to make sure that we're connected.
And you know what comes up for me when I hear you say that is, and I'm going to butcher the quote, so I'm not even going to try to do it, but I know it's somewhere, it's some meme in the internet where it says that there's like a lower group of people that talks about other people. And then the second group up talks about historical events.
About events, correct.
And then the people that have the highest quotient of happiness are the ones that talk about ideas.
Correct.
And that's kind of what I'm gleaning from that almost, is it's a way, because you're spending your whole life helping each other micromanage this existence and all the integrated complexities. And that's not a very fun frequency. You get bogged down in all of the the forced myopia of our daily life and existence. And so if you guys sit down, it gives you an opportunity to share ideas, which is kind of fun.
And it takes you above that. They say the devil's in the details, and that's where we kind of get devilish at each other, is in those details. Well, why didn't you, and why didn't, and back and forth, and worrying about little stuff, where if you can rise above that and go, whoa, what's the bigger picture here?
Yeah, and I love that. And you have this great quote in your book. It says, because you're talking about your life coach in this capacity, you say, having a life coach that pushes me to my peak performance in all aspects of my life, which keeps me from going into my husband's life to find things to take charge of.
Amen.
Now, how true is that?
That is so true. That is so, so true.
Yeah, you mentioned another quote. Well, everybody knows about the idle hands. Right?
Yes, Devil's Workshop.
Yeah, exactly. And so that couldn't, I think, paint the portrait clearer, though, about another interesting element, which is independence and autonomy. Believe it or not, is also a really healthy way that you can still come together.
True.
Because if you're too reliant upon that other person's life, or you're living inside of their life, then you start to meddle in it.
Yes.
Because your happiness or your sense of well-being or self-being is embedded so deeply into that, and then what it creates is an external locus of control.
Right.
Because then they're dictating your quotient of happiness.
You're allowing that.
And you're the one who's allowing that.
You're allowing that.
Right.
Yes.
So what sort of lesson or insight can you speak to that to make sure we don't get rutted in those holes?
Well, that you just hit the nail on the head. You are a unique and valuable and wonderful person all on your own. And that's why the two of you came together in the first place, is that you admired each other's uniqueness and saw value.
Right.
And so continue to grow that.
Yeah.
Work on the only thing you have control over, which is you. And then because of that, you will continue to flower and flourish and become even more wonderful to that whole experience, and allow them to do the same thing. Don't meddle. Don't dictate. Don't give the how-tos and the lists and so forth, so much so that they can't grow.
Yeah.
They're stifled.
How have you found this introspection, this work, this mastery now around this topic to help you in your professional life?
Well, as you mentioned at the top of the show here, unfortunately, we do come across a lot of situations where divorce and failing marriages are very prevalent. And, if I can be a resource to someone, I've often had people reach out to me and say, I just wanted to let you know, things aren't going so well here. And, that's a humbling position to be in, but at the same time, I feel I need to give back something that maybe they could take back that day and put in their life, and maybe it could start things back on a track.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen a couple of times, and I just hope that more and more people can see that it is work on you, then work together and have help getting there, and follow some of the lessons in this book that will help you on a day-to-day basis.
It's been said 100 times before, so I'm going to only further the trivialization of this, but it is the concept of the cup being half full, and then all too often I see that where people try to find outside elements to pour into their cup to make them full. And is that the way it works?
That's unfortunately... chasing the next shiny object is, I think it's the American possession. Instead of looking at, you've probably heard of the book Acres of Diamonds. It's right in your own yard. Right. So mine that already. Yeah. And your cup will be full. And weave in that spiritual element, because that's what really keeps the rope taut in that unity together. That's been very true for you, and that's a theme throughout the course. It's even in your title, maintaining harmony in your Christ-centered home, right? So that's a really big piece for you. Yes. The thing that I think which is interesting about the Acres of Diamonds, and I didn't understand this when I first read that book about, maybe 10, maybe 15 years ago now, is that the first thought that I had was, be happy with what you have already currently. And in that, I even missed it, that I missed the message on the first time, because it's not, again, about an outside. What he's saying is that, or listen, this is my interpretation of what he's saying after all these years, is that the Acres of Diamonds is within you. You're the one who's going to find love for yourself. And then you able to, like, to go back to the cup analogy, the part that spilleth over is the then that you can give in service to other people. And my first impression was, just be happy with the people that are already around you in your life. Don't look for other acres of diamonds. The truth was the introspection needed to go internal or inside. Right. And that's a theme I noticed throughout the course of your book as well. Right? Mind yourself.
Right.
There's a lot of wealth in there. Let it come out instead of looking for finding that solution in someone else or in something else.
Yeah. So what else can you say about that? Did we cover all bases on the not be accomplished alone, or was there one little nugget out there still outstanding?
Well, I think we covered the threes. Like for myself, as I mentioned, my spiritual foundation is key and core, and weaving that in, and then having an accountability partner to keep you on track that you've agreed to work with this in mind. And then thirdly is having a plan where you meet one-on-one with your spouse other than talking about day-to-day events.
Yeah.
So that you can kind of rise above all of that and reunite with topics that take you to a different level.
And that's kind of what I was fishing for. And so I'll go behind the scenes. The one thing that I wrote down that I didn't hear you say so far was the big picture goal. Because I think that's an essential part.
Yes.
And this is a theme that you do hear people talk about. This is weaving its way into the consciousness that, when you're courting somebody or you're dating, a critical element is making sure that you both see your future vision to be similar. That you're both kind of tying into the same, sure, what got me here isn't what's going to get me there, but at least we're both working on the same kind of thing.
Right.
And I think that, for me, is the critical element, the critical missing piece of a marriage that lasts. Because in the beginning, we're bound together tightly by the romance period.
Right.
All of the fuzzy, googly stuff that sort of masks, the honesty, you might say, right? And the ego is pushed way back into the shadows of the recesses, and then with time, when that erodes, all that stuff comes to the fore.
Correct.
And so your relational ego has to evolve together.
Correct.
Otherwise, there'll be a split, there'll be a bifurcation, then one will leave the other in the dust, respectively. And I think that is a critical piece.
It is critical, and it really takes a concerted effort to invest in each other, to learn the fears and their own personal goals that they're working on, that they feel comfortable sharing, because maybe it is different from what you thought or knew before, but then accepting them just as they are and encouraging them to flourish in whatever that aspiration is anyway.
Yeah. Well played. Ladies and gentlemen, that is why we got Charlotte Volsch in the house today. And by the way, this piece that we're sort of working off of today is hers, and it's called "You Can Be Right or You Can Be Married." And as I say that out loud, the more times I say it, the more people I think I'm going to give a copy of this to, because that thing of the ego, man, it's such an impermeable force, and unfortunately, the force doesn't seem to work well with others. It doesn't play well with others.
Well, we're born into this world selfish, Jesse. We have to learn how to be selfless.
It's true. It's true. It's a survival technique.
It is.
You got to
and
tip
it's
the
a
cap to that.
daily effort.
And like we said earlier, what's got us here isn't what can say. So the ego got us here, but what's going to get us there to happiness and not being alone and having family and all these things in a healthy marriage is your ability to learn these things. So knowing about it is not enough. That's why you got to have the book, gang. All right. And you know what? Even more than that, if you're live here in San Diego here with us on ESPN Radio, she's got a live event she's going to be doing in January here locally. Go to yourmarriageharmony.com for more updates on dates and locations forthcoming. And coming up, gang, I'm going to get you caught up on some sports update. After all, this is ESPN, right?
That's
so we got to
right.
get you all caught up. I know there's tons of scores and stuff, highlights you're going to get. And then we're going to get back into self-care as the key component. And again, talk about critical threads, man. This is it. Got to take care of yourself, right?
Amen.
And we'll be taking care of you live back in the stash. Real Talk Radio San Diego. We'll be right back.